Some people remember the exact moment their life changes. For Ethan Carter, it was the sound of his phone vibrating on a cheap wooden table. In a house that never truly felt like home, he stared at the screen for a second. Unknown number. Normally he wouldn't pick it up, but something about that moment, something quiet, almost invisible, made him swipe to answer. He didn't know it yet, but that one call was about to expose every lie his family had built their lives on. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Carter was about to stop being invisible. Ethan had spent 28 years learning one simple truth. He was not the favorite. Not even close. In his family, love was never equal. It was measured, distributed, controlled, and most of it went to his older brother. His brother had everything handed to him. Private school, a brand new car at 18, a fully paid university degree, connections, opportunities. Support. Ethan had something else. Excuses. Whenever he asked for help, there was always a reason why it wasn't possible. Money is tight. You need to learn responsibility. You're not ready. But somehow, money was never tight for his brother. Responsibility never applied to him, and readiness was never questioned. At first, Ethan thought it was temporary, that maybe if he worked harder, proved himself, became better, things would change. So he tried. He studied harder than anyone, took part-time jobs, saved every dollar, stayed quiet, stayed respectful. He did everything right, and nothing changed, because the truth was never about effort. It was about value. And in that house, Ethan simply wasn't worth as much. The moment that truth fully settled into his bones came one evening at the dinner table. His father didn't even look at him when he said it. Don't expect any inheritance. Everything we have will go to your brother. Just like that. No hesitation. No explanation. Just a decision that had clearly been made long ago. Ethan didn't argue, didn't react, didn't even ask why, because deep down, he already knew. He nodded, finished his meal, and went to his room. And that night, something inside him quietly shut down, not loudly, not dramatically. Just quietly. The part of him that expected fairness. A year later, he moved out. Small apartment, thin walls, cheap furniture, but for the first time in his life, peace. No comparisons, no silent judgments, no feeling like he was always falling short. Life wasn't easy. Money was tight. Work was exhausting. Some nights, dinner was just instant noodles and water, but it was honest. And strangely, that felt better than anything he had ever known. There was only one person from his family stayed close to, his grandmother. She lived alone in a quiet house, about 40 minutes away. Nothing fancy, but to Ethan, it felt like the only place in the world where he wasn't being measured. She never compared him to anyone, never asked why he wasn't more successful. Never made him feel like he had to prove something. She just listened, truly listened. Ethan, she used to say softly, not everything valuable needs to be loud. Back then, he didn't understand. He thought she was just being kind, trying to make him feel better. But now, he realized she had seen something in him that no one else ever bothered to look for. He started visiting her more often, fixing things around the house, carrying groceries, sitting with her while she told stories about the past, simple moments, but they meant everything, because in those moments, he wasn't the forgotten son, he wasn't the lesser one, he was just Ethan. Then one morning, everything changed. The call came early. Too early. His mother's voice was cold, flat, almost emotionless. She passed away last night. That was it. No softness, no pause. Just information. Ethan didn't say anything. He just grabbed his keys and drove. The house felt different the moment he walked in, empty, in a way that had nothing to do with furniture. He stood in the living room, looking around, trying to understand how a place that once felt so full could suddenly feel so hollow. It didn't make sense. Nothing did. The funeral was small. Controlled. Quiet. People said kind things, polite things, empty things. His brother stood off to the side, checking his phone. His parents spoke to guests like they were hosting an event, and Ethan just stood there. Next to the only person who had ever made him feel seen. Now gone. He thought that was the end of it. Another quiet loss, another reminder that nothing in his life ever really worked out. But 3 days later, his phone rang. Unknown number. This time, he answered. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. A lawyer, he said he was calling regarding his grandmother's estate. Ethan almost laughed. Estate? His grandmother didn't have that kind of life, but then the lawyer said something that made him pause. This specifically involves you. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Nothing in his family ever specifically involved him. Still, something about the tone made it impossible to ignore. So he agreed to meet. The office was intimidating. Clean, expensive, quiet. The kind of place where everything feels important. Ethan felt completely out of place, but he stayed because something inside him told him this mattered. The lawyer sat across from him, opened a file, and spoke calmly. Your grandmother left you a personal inheritance. Ethan frowned slightly. That doesn't sound right. The lawyer didn't react. He simply turned the document toward him, and the total amount is approximately $2.5 million. For a moment, everything stopped. The room, the air, his thoughts. $2.5 million. It didn't make sense, not even a little. Why me? Ethan finally asked. The lawyer looked directly at him. Because she chose you. And in that moment, for the first time in his life, Ethan Carter felt something he had never truly felt before. Not rejection, not comparison, not disappointment, but chosen. But the lawyer wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly. There's something else you need to know about your family. And just like that, Ethan realized this wasn't just about money. This was about truth. And whatever came next was going to change everything. Ethan didn't move. The lawyer's words hung in the air like something heavy, something that refused to settle. There's something else you need to know about your family. For a moment, Ethan just stared at him, trying to decide if this was real or if somehow he had stepped into someone else's life, because nothing about this made sense. Not the money. Not the choice, and definitely not the idea that there were still secrets left to uncover. I'm listening, he said quietly. The lawyer nodded once, as if he had expected that response. Then he closed the file slowly. Not to hide anything, but almost like he was preparing Ethan for what came next. Your grandmother wasn't who you thought she was, he said. Ethan frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, the lawyer continued calmly, the life she showed your family was only a small part of the truth. Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossing instinctively. She lived in that house for over 30 years, he said. There's no hidden empire there. The lawyer didn't argue. He simply slid another document across the table. Before she retired, she was a silent partner in multiple international logistics and real estate firms. Investments made decades ago that grew significantly over time. Ethan stared at the paper. Numbers, company names, signatures, all real, all impossible. She never told anyone? He asked. Not exactly, the lawyer replied. She told one person. Ethan's chest tightened slightly. Me? The lawyer shook his head. No, your father. The silence that followed felt different. Sharper, colder. Ethan's single quotes mind began connecting pieces. Fragments of conversations, strange moments, things that never quite made sense before. My father knew? He asked slowly. Yes, and he never said anything? The lawyer met his eyes. He was aware of her assets. He was also aware of her decision regarding inheritance. Ethan felt something dark begin to rise in his chest. Not shock, not confusion. Something deeper, something heavier. So he knew. She wasn't leaving anything to him, Ethan said. Yes. And he didn't tell anyone? No. Ethan let out a quiet breath. Of course he didn't, because that would mean admitting something he could never accept. That for once, he wasn't the chosen one. What about my brother? Ethan asked. The lawyer paused for half a second. Your brother was also made aware, recently. Ethan gave a small, humorless smile. Let me guess. He didn't take it well? The lawyer didn't respond immediately, but that silence was enough of an answer. Ethan stood up slowly. His head felt heavy, like the weight of years was finally settling all at once. So what happens now? He asked. The lawyer remained seated. Legally, the assets are in the process of being transferred to you. However, Ethan looked at him. However what? You should be prepared, the lawyer said carefully. Your family may not react? Calmly. Ethan almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. They never do. He said quietly. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his apartment. Same thin walls. Same cheap furniture, but everything felt different. Not because of the money, but because of the truth. All those years, all those moments where he thought he simply wasn't enough. And now he knew. It was never about him. It was about choices that were made long before he even understood what was happening. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was his mother. Ethan stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then answered. Why didn't you tell us? No greeting. No hesitation. Just accusation. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Tell you what? Don't play dumb, she snapped. We know about the inheritance. Of course they do. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. That was fast. Your father spoke to the lawyer, she continued. You were going to keep this from your own family? Ethan let out a slow breath. My own family? He repeated. There was a pause on the other end. Short. Uncomfortable. Then she spoke again. Sharper this time. That money belongs to this family. And there it was. Not concern. Not curiosity. Not even surprise. Just entitlement. Ethan sat up slightly. No, he said calmly. It doesn't. Silence. Then, you think you can just take everything? She said, her voice rising. After everything we've done for you? Ethan's expression didn't change. Everything you've done for me? He repeated quietly. He almost wanted to laugh. Again, but he didn't, because this wasn't funny anymore. Put your father on the phone, he said. There was a brief shuffle. Then a different voice. Colder. More controlled. Ethan. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Years of unspoken tension sitting between them. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. You knew. It wasn't a question. Yes, his father replied. Just like that. No denial. No explanation. Just the truth. And you didn't think I deserved to know? Ethan asked. You didn't need to know, his father said. Ethan nodded slowly. Even though he couldn't be seen. Of course. Same pattern, different situation. That money should be divided, his father continued. Equally. That's the only fair solution. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Fair? He said. The word felt strange in his mouth, like something he hadn't used in a long time. Don't do this, his father warned. Don't let this come between the family. Ethan's eyes hardened slightly. Between the family? He repeated. There was that phrase again? Family? You made that decision a long time ago? Ethan said quietly. Silence. I'm not discussing this, his father said finally. We'll handle it properly. The line went dead. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. And for the first time, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel overlooked. He didn't feel like the one trying to prove something. He felt clear. Because now he understood something important. This was never going to be a conversation. It was going to be a fight. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Carter wasn't going to step back. The next morning, another call came in. This time, from his brother. Ethan stared at the screen. Then answered. Congratulations. His brother said. The tone was light, too light, artificial. Thanks. Ethan replied. A short pause. Then, you got lucky, his brother continued. Let's not pretend this is anything else. Ethan smiled faintly. Is that what you think? That's exactly what I think, his brother said. So let's not make this complicated. Ethan leaned back. I'm listening. We split it, his brother said. 50-50, clean, simple. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He just let the silence stretch, long enough to make the other side uncomfortable. Say something, his brother snapped. Ethan's voice was calm when he finally spoke. No. The word landed hard. What? Do you mean no? his brother said, irritation rising. I mean exactly that. Ethan replied. Another pause. This one heavier? You think you deserve all of it? His brother said. Ethan's expression didn't change. No, he said calmly. I know I was chosen for it. That silence again, but this time it felt different, darker. You're making a mistake, his brother said quietly. Ethan looked out the window. The world outside looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. No, he said softly, I'm finally fixing one. The call ended, and as Ethan sat there in the quiet of his small apartment, he realized something else. This wasn't just about keeping the money. This was about everything that had been taken from him. Slowly, quietly, over the years. And now, for the first time, he had the power to take something back, not loudly, not recklessly, but carefully, and whatever his family was planning, they had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet, and Ethan had learned something about silence over the years. Silence wasn't peace. Silence meant something was building. He didn't rush anything, didn't celebrate. Didn't he make any sudden moves? He went to work like usual, came home like usual, ate the same simple meals from the outside. Nothing had changed, but inside, everything had got, because now, for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't reacting. He was waiting. 3 days after the calls, the first move came. It started with his bank account, or more accurately, with access to it. Ethan was standing at an ATM, trying to withdraw cash when the machine declined his card. He frowned. Tried again. Declined. That didn't make sense. His account wasn't empty. He checked his phone, and that's when he saw it. Temporary. Hold all outgoing transactions. Restricted. Ethan stared at the screen for a long second. Then exhaled slowly. There it is. He didn't panic. Didn't call the bank immediately. Instead, he stepped back and thought. Who benefits from this? There was only one answer. An hour later, he was sitting across from the same lawyer again. This time, his posture was different, more grounded. More certain. They've started, Ethan said calmly. The lawyer nodded like he had expected it. Double quotes. Yes, we were notified this morning. On what grounds? Ethan asked. A dispute, the lawyer replied. Your father and brother have filed a claim questioning the validity of the inheritance. Ethan let out a quiet breath. Of course they did. They're saying your grandmother may not have been in a stable state of mind when she made the decision, the lawyer continued. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. That was low, but not surprising. And the account? Ethan asked. Standard procedure during investigation, the lawyer said. Temporary restriction until things are reviewed? Ethan nodded slowly. So they're trying to delay it. Yes, and pressure me. Yes, Ethan leaned back slightly. For a moment, he said nothing, just thinking. Then, what aren't they telling me? He asked. The lawyer studied him for a second, then reached into the file. There's something your grandmother left for you, he sighed. Instructions. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of instructions? The lawyer placed a sealed envelope on the table. Old. Carefully preserved. She asked that this only be given to you if something like this happened. Ethan stared at it. His fingers hovered over the envelope for a moment. Before picking it up. It felt heavier than it should have. Slowly, he opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. The moment he saw her handwriting, everything else faded for a second. He took a breath, then began to read. If you're reading this, it means they've done exactly what I expected. Ethan's grip tightened slightly. I'm sorry you're being pulled into this, but I knew they wouldn't accept my decision quietly. He swallowed. You need to understand something, Ethan. What I gave you was never just money. His eyes moved faster now. It's control. It's protection. And most importantly, it's truth. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Every word pulling him deeper. For years I watched how you were treated. I saw what they gave you and what they withheld. His chest tightened. You were never less. You were simply not convenient for them. A long pause. I made my decision a long time ago. Ethan's breathing slowed, but I also prepared for this moment. That line made him stop, prepared. How? There are documents your father doesn't know about. Assets not listed in the primary. Estate. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. They are secured under a secondary structure, legal, untouchable unless you choose to reveal them. Ethan looked up at the lawyer, secondary structure. He asked. The lawyer nodded slowly. She created a separate holding, completely independent from the contested estate. Ethan looked back at the letter. If they try to take from you, you don't fight them the way they expect. His heart was beating slower now, steadier. You let them believe they have power. A small pause, and then, you take it away. Ethan sat back in his chair. The room suddenly felt very quiet. The bottom of the letter. One final line, I trust you to do what I never could. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment when he opened them again. Something had changed. Not anger, not pain. Clarity. He folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope, then looked at the lawyer. How much? He asked. The lawyer didn't hesitate. Roughly 8 million. Ethan didn't react outwardly, but inside, everything shifted. So this is what she meant. They don't know? Ethan asked. No, the lawyer replied. And legally, they have no claim to it. Ethan nodded slowly, for the first time since this began. He smiled, not out of happiness, but understanding. Good, he said quietly, because now, this wasn't a fight anymore. It was a game. And for the first time, Ethan wasn't the weakest player at the table that evening. His phone rang again. His father. Ethan answered. Have you thought about what I said? His father asked. Ethan walked slowly across his apartment. Yes, he replied calmly. I have. And? His father pressed. Ethan stopped near the window, looking out at the city. I'm willing to discuss it. He said a pause, then, that's a smart decision, his father said. Satisfaction creeping into his voice. Ethan's expression didn't change. But not today. He continued. Another pause. What do you mean? His father asked. I mean, Ethan said quietly, you'll have to wait. And before his father could respond, Ethan ended the call because now he understood something important. They thought they were in control. They thought they were applying pressure. They thought he would break, but they didn't know. He had already stepped outside the game they were playing, and soon, very soon, they were going to realize they had made a very expensive mistake. The shift didn't happen all at once. It never does. Real power doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly, almost invisibly until it's too late to stop. Ethan didn't rush. That was the first thing his family got wrong about him, they thought. Silence meant weakness. They thought patience meant hesitation. They thought waiting meant fear. They were wrong. A week passed. The legal dispute moved forward exactly how his father had planned. Documents were filed. Statements were made. Allegations carefully crafted to paint a picture. An elderly woman not fully aware, a sudden, irrational decision. An unfair outcome from the outside. It looked convincing. That was the point. Ethan let it happen. Didn't interrupt, didn't challenge, didn't defend himself publicly, and that confused them because they were expecting resistance. Emotion. Desperation. Instead, they got nothing but behind that silence. Ethan was moving. The second structure his grandmother had created wasn't just money. It was leverage. Control over assets his father had quietly depended on for years. Without ever realizing where that control truly came from, the layer had explained it in detail. Small percentages, hidden shares, strategic placements in companies his father's business relied on. Nothing obvious, nothing loud, but enough to shift the ground beneath him. And Ethan had made a decision. He wasn't going to fight his family directly. He was going to let them weaken themselves. The first step was simple. Invisible. He approved a series of internal changes across those holdings. Nothing illegal, nothing aggressive, just adjustments. Contract renewals delayed, funding approvals slowed, key decisions Pause. Dot from the outside, it looked like normal corporate friction, but inside his father's company, it felt like something was off. Dot at first, they ignored it. Minor issues. Temporary delays then. Things started stacking. A shipment didn't clear on time. Deal fell through unexpectedly. A partner suddenly became unavailable. Small problems. Dot, but consistent, and consistency creates pressure. Ethan watched all of it from a distance. Quietly. Carefully. He didn't celebrate, didn't react, because this wasn't revenge. Fueled by anger. This was correction. Meanwhile, his brother lost patience. The call came late at night. No greeting. No fake politeness this time. What are you doing? His brother snapped. Ethan sat calmly, phone in hand. Nothing, he replied. Don't lie to me, his brother said. Deals are collapsing. Payments are getting delayed. This isn't random. Ethan remained silent for a moment. Then, sounds like business problems, he said evenly. You think this is funny? His brother said, his voice tightening. Ethan's tone didn't change. I think it's predictable. There was a pause. Then his brother said something. Different. Quieter. More dangerous. You should have taken the deal. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. 50-50, his brother continued. You had a way out. Now things are going to get complicated. Ethan leaned back for the first time. There was a faint edge in his voice. They already are, he said. The call ended. That night, Ethan opened the letter again. Not because he needed answers, but because he wanted to remember something. You let them believe they have power, and then you take it away. He read that line twice. Then folded the letter again. Because now it was time for the next step. The following morning, he met with the lawyer again. I'm ready, Ethan said. The lawyer studied him briefly, then nodded. Then we move forward, he replied. And just like that, everything accelerated. The legal case his family had built started to crack. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Because the moment Ethan's legal team introduced evidence, the entire foundation shifted. Medical records clear, verified. His grandmother had been fully competent, fully aware. Recorded statements, signed, witnessed. Her intentions, undeniable. And then the final piece, a private video recording. His grandmother, sitting calmly, looking directly into the camera. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said, and I stand by my decision. That was a. The case didn't collapse instantly, but it stopped moving forward, because now it couldn't, and his father knew it. The next call didn't come from his brother. It came from his father. The tone was different this time, less controlled, less certain. What do you want? He asked. Ethan stood by the window again. Same view, same city, but a completely different position. I already told you, Ethan said calmly. No, his father replied. You didn't? Ethan turned slightly. I'm not giving it back, he said. Silence. You're making a mistake, his father said again, but this time it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like concern. Ethan noticed that. And for a brief moment, he almost felt something. Almost. But then it passed, because some realizations come too late. No, Ethan said quietly. You just didn't expect me to stop accepting mine. The line went silent. And for the first time, his father had nothing to say. That was the moment everything truly changed, because power isn't about money. It's about position. And for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't standing below them. He was standing across from them, and they felt it. The pressure. The shift, the loss of control. But Ethan wasn't done, because this was never just about winning. It was about balance. And balance requires everything to be seen clearly, even the things people try to hide. And in the next move, Ethan was going to reveal something his family had spent years burying, something that would make this irreversible. The truth doesn't explode into your life. It seeps in. Quietly. Patiently. Until one day, there's no room left to ignore it. By now, Ethan understood something his family never expected him to learn. Power isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply waits. And then it reveals. The final piece had been sitting there the entire time. hidden dot, protected dot, waiting for the right moment. Ethan didn't rush into it, because timing was everything. He spent the next few days preparing, reviewing documents, listening to recordings, connecting details that had never made sense before, and the more he looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about favoritism dot, it wasn't just about neglect dot, it was about something much deeper, something his family had buried so carefully. They thought it would never surface. The meeting was set quietly dot, no. Lawyers present this time dot, just family dot, the same house dot, the same dining table dot, the same place where, years ago, Ethan had first learned exactly where he stood, only this time. He wasn't the same person. His father sat at the head of the table dot, his brother across from him, his mother beside him. The air was tense dot, heavy dot, uncomfortable. Let's end this, his father said. Breaking the silence, Ethan nodded slightly. Yes, he said calmly, let's. His brother leaned forward, impatience clear on his face. Then say it, he said. What do you want? Ethan looked at him dot, not with anger dot, not with resentment, just clarity. I want the truth, he said. A pause. His father frowned slightly. What are you talking about? Ethan reached into his bag slowly and placed a file on the table dot. No one touched it, but everyone looked at it. Open it, Ethan said dot. His brother hesitated, then grabbed the file and flipped it open dot. At first confusion, then recognition dot, and then fear. What is this? His mother asked, her voice tightening. Ethan didn't answer. Immediately, he let them see it dot, process it. Bank records dot, old agreements, signed, transfers, hidden accounts, all leading back to one thing dot, money that was never supposed to be seen. You used her? Ethan said quietly dot, silence dot. His father's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Ethan met his eyes. I know everything, he said dot, and this time there was no doubt in his voice. You knew about her investments, Ethan continued. You didn't just know. You depended on them. His brother looked up sharply. You built your business using her money, Ethan said. But you never told anyone where it came from. His mother shook her head. No, that's not. It is, Ethan said calmly. He reached for another document dot and placed it on the table. A signed agreement dot, old dot, but clear dot, his grandmother's name dot, his father's signature, a silent partnership. She trusted you, Ethan said quietly, and you turned that into control. His father slammed his hand on the table. That was an agreement. Ethan didn't flinch. No, he said, that was dependence. Silence filled the room again dot, because now there was nowhere left to hide. You didn't just ignore me, Ethan continued. You made sure I stayed out of it. His brother looked away. Because if I ever got close, Ethan said, I would have seen this. The truth, not favoritism dot, fear dot. They weren't protecting the brother. They were protecting the secret. And Ethan was the only risk. That's why I was never included, he said softly. Not because I wasn't enough. He paused, but because I wasn't controllable. No one spoke because there was nothing left to say. The illusion was gone, and in its place was something far more uncomfortable dot, reality dot. After a long silence, his father finally spoke. What do you want? He asked again, but this time it wasn't a demand dot, it was a question. Ethan looked around the table dot, slowly dot, at the people who had shaped his entire life without ever truly seeing him. Then he said something none of them expected. Nothing. Confusion. What? His brother said. I don't want anything from you. Ethan replied. His voice was calm dot, steady dot, final. I'm keeping what was given to me, he continued, but I'm not taking anything else. His father stared at him, trying to understand. Then why do all this? He asked dot. Ethan picked up the file, closed it, because you needed to see it, he said. A pause. And so did I. Silence, not heavy this time dot, just empty, because the fight was over, not with shouting dot, not with destruction, but with truth. Ethan stood up dot for a brief moment. No one moved dot, no one stopped him, because deep down, they all knew there was nothing left to hold him. There, he walked to the door, paused for just a second, then stepped outside dot. The air felt Different, lighter dot, not because everything was fixed dot, but because something inside him finally was for years. He had been trying to earn a place, trying to be enough, trying to matter dot, but now he understood something simple. He always did. He just didn't need them to prove it anymore, dot the money. It wasn't the victory. The truth was, and as Ethan walked away, he didn't feel anger, didn't feel regret, just freedom, because sometimes the greatest revenge is not becoming what hurt you, but becoming someone who no longer needs it. The end.